Hey, what's up, Nebraska? Rod here with the NFOA. This past week, we saw the last of new bills being introduced in the Nebraska legislature. There were really only 3 bills that I found of interest, maybe only 2 that the NFOA needs to follow. I'm going to mention the third one just because I found it very interesting, related to a fairly hot topic amongst firearms owners. So let's dig into this. This week we saw the last of new bills introduced, and there were a total of 739 new bills that were introduced, which is about 75 more than what we usually see on a first year cycle of a session. Outside of the topic of firearms bills, you may just be curious to see what your senator is doing and what they focus on. What are their priorities during a legislative session? You can go to the nebraskalegislature.gov website, search for bills, and search by the introducer. So you can take a look at your senator and see what their primary interests and focus is this session. So the bills that were introduced this session that firearms owners may want to pay attention to. First would be LB 542, introduced by Senator Lowe. This would adopt the Firearm Safety Act and provide a tax credit. So looking at this bill, he's adding a whole bunch of language to establish something called the Firearm Safety Act. And it's basically reiterating that firearms ownership is the right protected by the Constitution of the United States and Constitution of Nebraska. And that responsible firearms ownership is important to all Nebraskans. It goes on to then establish that approved firearms safety course would be then eligible for up to $100 credit on their taxes. It looks like the Nebraska State Patrol would be tasked with identifying the criteria that would have to be met to be eligible for the tax credit. It does look like the Nebraska concealed carry curriculum would meet that eligibility. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. I don't imagine too many senators are really interested in giving tax credits for anything, but if they're interested in trying to advance firearms safety within Nebraska, then certainly providing an extra incentive for people to attend training shouldn't be a bad thing, I wouldn't think. The next bill that was introduced is LB 582, introduced by Senator Brewer, and this would change provisions relating to possession of a stolen firearm. I found this kind of interesting. I think it's kind of redundant. Currently, Nebraska Statute 28-1212.03 says that any person who possesses, receives, retains, or disposes of a firearm, a stolen firearm, knowing that it has been or believing it has been stolen, is guilty then of a Class 2A felony, unless the firearm is possessed, received, blah, 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 with the intent to restore it to the owner. So that's the primary change. It goes from a person knowing it has been or believing it has been stolen to also include a person who should have known. I'd like to hear what you think about the bill. Comment down below or join the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association online forums and discuss the bill there. The final bill that I'm going to mention this week, again, isn't really a firearms related bill, but because school safety is such a hot topic, and of course there is a bill related to arming teachers that is getting some press this session, I found this particular bill introduced by Senator Chambers to be kind of interesting. LB 589, introduced by Senator Chambers, would prohibit peace officers from serving as school resource officers. It's kind of interesting. I don't know who he thinks should be filling the role of school resource officers. Perhaps it's a way to eliminate school resource officers completely. Now, school districts such as Lincoln and Omaha pretty much are hedging their bets on school security exclusively through the use of school resource officers. They seem to believe that all schools that are concerned about school security should use resource officers as the method of security. So if they're not allowed to use peace officers, it'd be interesting to see where this goes. So what are your thoughts, Nebraska? Should the NFOA take a position on this bill or just watch and see what happens? Hearing schedules for next week have been published, and none of the bills that the NFOA is following have been scheduled for hearings yet. I don't imagine anything that we are in favor of will be scheduled anytime soon. Also new this week, Lincoln Mayor Beitler has announced the creation of a new task force. Let's take a look at the details that were announced. This task force was created to study the safe storage of firearms. Now, if you've been paying much attention to Lincoln, you'll remember that not too long ago, the Lincoln City Council took up the discussion about safe storage. They wanted to create a local ordinance mandating safe storage. And there was quite a bit of discussion, both pro and con, and it was deferred. Well, now the mayor has decided he's going to establish the creation of a task force to study this. Now, Captain Stile of the Lincoln Police Department will chair a 17-member task force, and the members of that task force will include representatives of the Nebraskans Against Gun Violence, anti-gun group, a local business owner, doesn't specify who, a public school official, law enforcement officers, a city council member, members of local nonprofits, as well as public health, medical, and mental health professionals. Now, we're not really designating who those local nonprofits are. I don't imagine that it would be the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association. Looking at this, there are certain questions that need to be asked, such as, who are the stakeholders in this? Are all the stakeholders represented? If not, why? I don't see anyone on this list that would be considered a subject matter expert in firearms or common storage practices of firearms. I don't see anyone from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, NSSF, which is the industry representative, who has great programs on keeping firearms secure and educating children on firearm safety. I don't see the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association on this list, who has partnered with the NSSF on child safety and education. I also do not see anyone who would be an NRA instructor or other certified firearms instructor that would be able to contribute as a subject matter expert. I do believe that the City Council of Lincoln needs to be pressed on why not all the stakeholders are included. Contact your Lincoln officials and let them know what you think. Demand answers as to why not all stakeholders are included in this. Elsewhere around the state, Hastings is looking at introducing some bans on open carry in certain facilities. The City Council will be having discussions on that soon. I don't have an exact date on when that will be heard, but if you are in the Tri-City area around Hastings, I would recommend you look that up and attend the next City Council meeting and let them know what you think about putting a ban on open carry in certain locations. As we learn more, we'll be sure to let you know. That's all I've got for this week. Stay safe, Nebraska.